The day the notary handed me the keys to my grandparents' $1.2 million estate, I thought my struggle was finally over. I was standing in the marble foyer, holding my grandfather's antique pocket watch, when my mother walked in, snatched the deed out of my hands, and smiled. "Thanks for keeping it safe, honey," she said, sliding a document across the counter. "We went ahead and put it in my name. You're too young to handle this kind of responsibility." My own mother had forged my signature, stolen my inheritance, and expected me to quietly pack my bags. Everyone told me to let it go because she was family. But what my mother forgot was that my grandfather didn't just leave me his estate. He left me his legal team, his private records, and a master plan that was about to turn her victory into her ultimate downfall. Welcome back to BT Revenge Tales. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Clara Vance. I'm 29 years old, and until 3 months ago, I believed blood was thicker than water. My grandparents raised me in their sprawling $1.2 million estate in Oregon. It was a haven of oak trees, grandfather clocks, and quiet warmth, a sharp contrast to my mother, Eleanor, who had abandoned me at 7 to pursue a lavish, self-centered lifestyle. When my grandfather passed, he left the entire property solely to me, wanting to secure my future. The morning after his funeral, I sat in the study, tracing the polished mahogany desk, trying to process my grief. The door burst open and Eleanor walked in, trailing her brand-new husband, Marcus. Without a word of comfort, she tossed a stamped manila folder onto the blotter. I opened it, my blood turning to ice. It was a fresh deed transfer. "We went ahead and put it in my name," Eleanor said coldly, pouring herself a glass of my grandfather's scotch. "You're far too young to handle this kind of property. You have 14 days to pack your things." That evening, I demanded a meeting in the dining room, desperate for answers. Instead of remorse, I was met with icy contempt. Marcus leaned back in my grandfather's chair, twirling his gold ring, while Eleanor casually sliced her steak. "You're being hysterical, Clara," my mother sneered, wiping her mouth with a cloth napkin. "You've always been emotionally unstable. Giving a 29-year-old $1 million asset would ruin you. We're doing this for your own good." It was pure gaslighting. They weren't protecting me. They were cannibalizing my legacy. By the next morning, I discovered just how fast they were moving. A local contractor arrived to inspect the guest house, informing me that Eleanor had already listed it as a luxury rental. Worse, Marcus had applied for a massive equity line of credit against the main house to fund his failing import business. They didn't see me as a daughter who was grieving her grandparents. They saw me as a minor inconvenience, an obstacle standing between them and a mountain of free cash. My heart broke, but my eyes finally opened. The next morning, I drove straight to downtown Portland to see Mr. Harrison, my grandfather's estate attorney for over 30 years. His office was lined with heavy law books, smelling faintly of tobacco and cedar. As I laid the forged deed transfer on his desk, his jaw tightened. He put on his reading glasses, examining the notary stamp with a practiced, critical eye. "This notary," Harrison said quietly, "is a known associate of your stepfather, Marcus. Your mother didn't just bend the rules, Clara. She committed outright fraud. We can file a lawsuit today and freeze the title." "How long would a court battle take?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Months, maybe years," he warned. "And they'll bleed the estate dry with legal fees while living in it." Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, pulled open a side drawer, and retrieved a thick, wax-sealed manila envelope. Across the front, in my grandfather's unmistakable, sharp handwriting, were the words, "In case Eleanor tries to take what isn't hers." Harrison slid it across the mahogany table toward me. "Your grandfather knew your mother better than anyone, Clara. Open it." With trembling fingers, I broke the heavy red wax seal and pulled out a stack of legal documents tied with a blue ribbon. Inside was an irrevocable trust agreement and a complex property lien system, dated 8 months before my grandfather's death. Mr. Harrison tapped the paper with his pen. "Your grandfather saw this coming, Clara. When his health began to decline, he noticed how attentive Eleanor suddenly became. He knew she wasn't visiting out of love. She was scouting her inheritance. As I read through the dense legal clauses, a cold smile began to form on my face. My grandfather had set up a financial trapdoor. If Eleanor ever illegally altered the title deed or transferred ownership without my explicit, notarized consent, it automatically triggered a hidden $900,000 tax liability and accelerated debt clause tied to the estate's historical timber holdings. In simple terms, Harrison explained, his eyes glinting with quiet satisfaction, the moment your mother put that house in her name, she didn't just steal a property. She assumed total personal liability for a massive, dormant debt that must be paid in full within 30 days. She thinks she stole a kingdom, but she actually swallowed a poison pill. What do we do now? I asked, looking up from the documents. We give her enough rope to hang herself, Mr. Harrison replied smoothly. He drafted a subtle acknowledgement of transfer document, a paper that looked like a meek surrender from me, but legally sealed Eleanor's ownership and officially triggered the trust's debt clauses. I returned to the estate the next day, playing the role of the broken, defeated daughter. When I handed Eleanor the signed paper, she smirked, barely able to hide her triumph. I knew you'd see reason, Clara, she said patronizingly, tossing the paper onto the counter. That weekend, Eleanor and Marcus threw a lavish victory party at the house. Through my bedroom window, I watched them pop expensive champagne, showing off the grand parlor to their high society friends and laughing about how easily they had pushed me aside. I didn't scream or make a scene. Instead, I quietly packed my bags, placed my grandfather's antique pocket watch into my purse, and left my house key on the kitchen island. As I drove down the winding driveway into the night, I texted Harrison just 3 words: spring the trap. 2 weeks later, the peaceful neighborhood was disrupted by the sudden arrival of county tax auditors, bank officials, and process servers. Eleanor and Marcus were hosting an afternoon garden brunch when the front gates were blocked by official vehicles. Because the fraudulent deed transfer was now legally finalized on paper, the trust's hidden poison pill had fully activated. The local authorities delivered a formal notice of immediate tax acceleration and debt enforcement, $900,000 due in full within 30 days, or the property would face immediate government seizure and public foreclosure. My mother's world shattered in a single afternoon. The notary friend who had forged my signature panicked when federal auditors started asking questions, throwing Marcus directly under the bus to save himself. Facing imminent criminal charges for fraud and forgery, Marcus packed his designer bags in the middle of the night and fled the state, leaving Eleanor to face the music entirely alone. My phone rang endlessly that evening. When I finally answered, Eleanor was hyperventilating, her arrogant composure completely replaced by wild desperation. "Clara, please," she sobbed into the receiver. "There's been a horrible mistake. The bank is freezing all my accounts, and the police are coming. You have to fix this. Talk to Harrison. Tell them it was all a misunderstanding. We're family, Clara." I held the phone close, listening to her hysterical pleas, feeling no anger, only a cold, absolute clarity. "We were family, Mom," I said softly, "until you traded me for a deed." Then I hung up. To avoid state prison for felony forgery, Eleanor had no choice but to sign a complete, unconditional surrender of the estate, relinquishing every legal claim she had ever made. With the deed legally restored to my name, Mr. Harrison executed the trust funds, instantly dissolving the $900,000 debt trap my grandfather had laid. Today, Eleanor lives in a cramped, one-bedroom rental on the outskirts of town, working 2 retail jobs just to pay off the mounting credit card debt Marcus left behind before he vanished. As for me, I returned to my grandparents' estate. I converted the sprawling guest house into a retreat for young women navigating legal and financial hardship, giving them the sanctuary I almost lost. Every morning, as I sip coffee on the porch and listen to the Oregon breeze through the oak trees, I feel my grandfather's presence, reminding me that justice always finds its way home. What would you have done if your own mother betrayed you like this? Would you have fought back or walked away? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the videos on your screen for more crazy stories.